Hi, I'm Ilana Gersten with NUTV News, and in preparation for the Student Government Association elections, I sat down with Butke and Isabella Galinkin, who are running unopposed for SGA President and Vice President, to hear a little bit more about their visions for Northeastern. Thank you for coming to meet with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So to start, could you just tell me a little bit about your platform and what you're campaigning on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the short form is our campaign has 3 pillars. The first is SGA reform, which we think is very much needed in order to make SGA a more accessible platform for student activism on campus. The second is administration openness and accountability, really holding administration accountable for the decisions that they make that affect the students on campus. The third is student priorities. So this is maybe a less clear pillar of the platform, but it's really emphasizing the fact that we are not coming in necessarily with specific projects that we are most passionate about. We're coming in hoping to make this a space for student activism, for students to bring their voices, hopefully lifted up by the student government, and really creating a space to amplify activism that is happening on campus.
Yeah, and I'll just add that the name of our platform is called Power to the Pack. So what we mean by that is we want to give that power back to the students. We're students, we're hoping to support the students. When we all work together, we can really get these initiatives done.
Okay, great, thank you so much. So can you walk me through some of your main action plans?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is really one of the first things that I hope to do if elected, is sitting down and having a conversation with upper level administration at Northeastern about where the disconnect is when it comes to student activism. Because this is more specifically with the referenda process, which we can talk about further, but there have been multiple referenda that have passed with flying colors, huge amounts of student support that Northeastern administration has really failed to act on or even acknowledge. And so I want to get to the bottom of that and say, look, is there a better way for you to be hearing student concerns? Because then let's try that. But if there's not a better way for you to hear student concerns and you just don't want to hear them because you don't want to have to deal with them, then that is a huge problem. And SGA has been making a lot of concessions in the referenda process, in the election process, to really appeal to administration and make sure that they will then act on the things that get passed through. But if that's not happening, then why are we still making those concessions? Because clearly that's not the way to go. So that is kind of a first step. In terms of SGA reform, I think that there are a lot of little things that could make really big differences, including encouraging student leaders on campus that aren't a part of SGA to consider joining one of our action committees. The reason specifically that I would advocate for this is not only because it would be great to have more people working on activism through SGA's platform, but also we are running unopposed. And the last 2 student body presidents ran unopposed. And that's not what a democracy is. And so the eligibility for student body president is participating in SGA for a set number, I think it's a year.
1 year.
But that includes all of our committees that are open to anyone on campus and that aren't a huge time commitment, that are really activism centered. So the more we encourage students to engage with those activism platforms, that will make them eligible for student body president. That will hopefully blow the field wide open in the coming years, because that is what the student body deserves at Northeastern. So that's kind of one more tangible thing in terms of SGA specifically.
Yeah, I can think of another initiative we're really excited about, which is we really want to be able to connect clubs that are similar minded to work together, because there seems to be a lot of disconnect between different clubs that are all working towards the same goals. And oh my gosh, some collaboration between them would really push some of their projects forward. So we're hoping to do some group-based town halls in the fall. That's one of our big goals. We want to get, for example, all of the political action clubs in a space together so they can kind of throw ideas around. And also we want SGA to be present so that we can support them in the initiatives they're working on. We're really trying to make the campus more connected overall. So we would really like to work hands-on with clubs with clubs that are similar-minded and with individual students that have great ideas that they want to bring up to us. There's so many great student leaders on campus in and outside of student organizations, and we just want to make sure that they have a platform where their voices are heard so that SGA can support them with the resources we have and to really bring these initiatives forward.
Yeah, and something just quickly to add on to that, I do think that the Student Government Association has been functioning very much as a club in the past couple of years, almost because there's no other category for SGA. But the truth is, I would say SGA and probably RSA is the other one that I can think of that falls under this category. They're not really clubs. They're structures of the university. And so I think that we need to lean into that a little bit more and really take that into account as leadership in SGA. We are here for the students. We are here to connect the students with administration. We're not here to speak over student voices. We're here to amplify them. And so I think all of these goals go together in that notion of power to the pack, like this is about the students.
So I'm going to backtrack just slightly, because you brought up the fact that you are running unopposed, and the past two SGA presidents ran unopposed. Why specifically do you think that might be, that we've been having these constant one-party elections?
I think there are a couple reasons. I think that one is the fact that there is the restriction of you have to be an SGA for a year, and I think that a common understanding of that is that you have to be on leadership or you have to be in Senate, where there are a lot of ways that you can kind of hit that qualification of 1 year's membership of SGA. I also think that to a certain extent, like, a lot of people don't care. A lot of people, we've been tabling for the past week, the amount of people that I have had come up to me and say, I didn't know we had a student body president. Like, that's a problem, because this is a position that can have a lot of influence at the school. And I think that we do need to emphasize that. And one way of doing that is, well, two ways of doing that, I guess. One is definitely encouraging more people to get involved in SGA almost like tangentially. Like, you don't need to commit all of your time to this association, but being involved and kind of getting to know the activism would be really beneficial, I think, for a lot of students on campus. And then also really showing students, putting in the work, showing students what SGA can do. Because no disrespect at all to the past couple of people who have held the office, but there has been a lot of drive to appeal to administration and really make sure that SGA is working with administration and building that relationship. And I do think that the relationship with the student body has kind of gotten, maybe not pushed to the side, but forgotten a little bit. And that's not fair to the student body, and that's not what SGA is for. And so I think that that has also restricted the productivity of SGA in terms of student activism. And so I think that if we start moving away from that, there will be more space for real successes and real change coming from within SGA, which also might bolster more people to want to run for the office and seek out engagement with the activism that we do.
Yep. I mean, I would also just like to emphasize, like, we would have loved a contested election. It's unfortunate that it didn't happen this year, and I think Casey hit all the points that I think SGA can kind of get caught up in its little bubble, and then when two people announce they're going to be running, maybe other people decide not to. But we don't want that to happen. We want there to be a democracy, like Casey was saying, and we're hoping that in the future people will feel more comfortable and more driven to go for these positions.
I also do think it goes back to kind of SGA being a club environment where, like, Izzy and I are currently on leadership, and I do think that she touched on a really good point of sometimes when two people in leadership announce that they want to run, maybe senators are discouraged because, oh, I'm not as qualified as them, or they're my friends, I don't want to run against them. And I think that at the end of the day, we need to remember that we are all here because we care about the work. And so, as Izzy said, we would have loved a contested election because that would have given the student body more choice, and it would have given us the opportunity to really evaluate our platform further and have debates and have more conversations about what the student body actually needs. I guess that goes back to why we're grateful that you are asking us these questions today. But yeah, I think she touched on a really good point there.
Backtracking again a little bit, earlier you had mentioned the referendum process. Could you walk us through what a referendum process looks like?
So I will caveat this first with saying I have never gone through it from the perspective of proposing referenda. So this is very much from the SGA perspective. Basically, what it is an opportunity for student organizations or students to propose a question to go on the student body election. Ballot. I was like, there's a word missing from that. And so what it looks like is the authors present I don't know if there's a term for it, but I always kind of refer to it as a referendum proposal, where it includes the justification for why this is necessary. It includes any background information about the referendum, and it includes a ballot question. So then that goes then to SGA's cabinet, which is the leadership of SGA, and it is a quite straightforward vetting process in the cabinet in terms of what are the factors. Fairness of wording, so it can't be a leading question, it can't have an appeal to morality in any sense. No, that's Senate. Fairness of wording, and legality. Those are our two things that cabinet votes on. Because of the way Northeastern functions, we have to make sure that it abides by any school regulations, then local, state, and federal regulations. And then the ones that pass from that cabinet vetting then go to Senate. In that kind of week or so between the cabinet vetting and the Senate vetting, there's a chance to appeal for any of those referendums that were denied from that initial vetting process. And so they have the opportunity then to, for example, if it was a fairness of wording problem, like it would have been helpful to have an extra word in the referendum, they can then change that and then appeal the decision. So this year, 10 referenda were proposed initially. I think only 6 got through the cabinet vetting, but then 3 more appealed, so 9 went to Senate. And then Senate has to choose a maximum of 5. That was imposed by the university's administration a couple of years ago. And we do ranked choice voting to make sure that no one's like wasting any votes, or we're really taking everything into account. And the process in Senate is repetitiveness, so you don't want a referenda question that has already been on the ballot or that doesn't really offer anything new. Priority for the students, feasibility in terms of what can the university accomplish. I think that's it. Mm-hmm. And so then we go through ranked choice voting, and the top 5 then are successful through Senate. The sponsors of those referenda need to get, I think it's currently 750 signatures to then officially send that referenda question and the signatures to the elections committee, and it goes on the ballot. Just saying that out loud emphasizes how lengthy and complicated of a process it is.
But we definitely want to make sure that students know that not only Casey and I are on the ballot, but also these wonderful 5 referenda that got passed through this whole process managed to get all those signatures. Yeah. That means it's important to students. Students really care about it if it was able to get through all of that. So we're hoping that students know that this election is more than just us.
On that note, could you speak a little bit about the 5 referendum on the ballot?
Yes. So, okay, I really hope I remember all of them.
We were not the authors of
yes.
them. So.
MBTA fare reduction referendum is calling for the university to enter into conversations with the MBTA to talk about a discounted pass for Northeastern students. These are in no particular order. UHCS funding referendum is calling for an increase in funding for staffing for UHCS, particularly for mental health professionals, and also has the goal of really diversifying the people that students are able to go to with kind of counseling concerns. Mental health orientation programming referendum is calling on the university to introduce a specific program during student orientation about mental health. So this is me talking, not the referendum. So resources on campus, like what to do if you're facing a crisis, things like that. Meal plan guarantee referendum acknowledges the fact that Northeastern University's base meal plan is far above the national average for meal plans on college campuses. So it's really targeting food insecurity on campus and calling on the university to make a more affordable meal plan, because students should never have to worry about not having access to food when they're going to Northeastern. Oh yes, per credit hour tuition referendum. So this touches on the fact that, thank you. This touches on the fact that if students are taking 3 courses in a given semester, they have to apply for a petition for reduced load, which means that they are charged for 4 classes unless they petition and request that fee reduction. So this is calling on the university to just scrap that process, and students should be paying for the credit hours that they're taking, and they shouldn't have to go through this process of a petition, which might be denied, and really facilitating that for students.
So our next question. So recently there's been some discussions about possible racist undertones in discussions about things SGA has done in relation to the surrounding community of Northeastern, including Roxbury. What do you have to say on that matter?
I think it is an incredibly valid concern. I think that it's really important that all of us, not only as student leaders, but all of us as students, recognize the impact that Northeastern has on the community around us, specifically in this time of a pandemic, and specifically when the university is further considering development in areas like Roxbury. Something that I think is, again, one of these easier fixes that haven't been talked about enough is in Senate when administrators come to talk about things like development. I would love to, if possible, this is more your domain, but I would love to, if possible, invite Roxbury community leaders to that same meeting. Facilitate those conversations, make sure that senators and students are hearing directly from the communities that Northeastern's decisions are impacting. In terms of these undertones in regards to SGA, the issue that this stemmed from was the referenda vetting process. I think that it's incredibly unfortunate that we had to cut any of the referenda. Ultimately, the senators decided what they decided. I think that there were definitely elements of the conversation that I did not agree with, in terms of things that senators said. But ultimately, that's what SGA is for. It's a platform for discussion, and I wish that there had been more acknowledgement in that meeting of the very real impact that Northeastern has on the communities that surround it. I will also say, kind of not as a direct response to that question, but something that definitely needs to be acknowledged in the conversation about this is it was hard to see individual senators really get, there were a couple senators who got like threats online and things like that. And I don't think that that's appropriate in any circumstance. I very much appreciate all of the students who spoke out saying, we have these concerns with how this decision was made. And we have these concerns about which referenda made it past this vetting process. I truly think when it comes to this specific decision, to me, the issue is not as much which referenda ultimately made it onto the ballot, because to be perfectly frank, the testing referenda and the housing development referenda, I don't remember what their official names were, but those were the two in question. There were a lot of students who were heavily in favor of those in Senate, but because of the ranked choice voting and because of the fact that we can only have 5 on the ballot, they didn't make it. And that, quite frankly, bothers me to no end, because I think that all of the referenda that were brought to Senate, or even brought to Cabinet this year, were incredibly valuable referenda and incredibly valuable data for the administration to have, indicating what students care about on this campus. And so, to me, there are steps that need to be taken within SGA of really acknowledging that we are here for the students. So we need to be representing all of our constituents. We need to encourage all voices on campus to be heard. But also, we need to have a conversation with administration about why the heck 5 referenda are all that's allowed on the ballot, and why this process is so complicated. Because I think that whole conversation highlighted a lot of things that are wrong with SGA in a lot of different spheres. And honestly, it was incredibly helpful as people who want to be on leadership next year in terms of all the things that we need to tackle.
Yeah, I will just say thank you so much for bringing up this question, because I think it also ties in nicely with our personal goals on our platform. So addressing the first point with like developments in Roxbury and in that situation, that's something that if we had just gotten more communication from the administration when the project was being initiated, that maybe students could have had more input in that process, and it would have maybe helped a lot from the beginning. Because unfortunately, a lot of times administration will start working on something and it takes them too long to finally ask for student feedback. So being that one of our points is administration accountability, we hope to improve that in the future. And then as far as the second point, that's SGA reform. We want to make sure that SGA is a safe space for students to be able to voice their opinions, and we do support our senators in the way that they express their thoughts and different viewpoints on the legislation, but also we need to keep in mind that all of this is public record, and there should be better training enforced so that they know that everything they're saying would be public information.
And just to jump in there, I think there does need to be clarification about what that means, because it's not, we don't want senators to talk to media organizations on campus. We want senators to feel abundantly confident voicing their opinions and talking to media organizations on campus, talking out about things that they see wrong within SGA, things that they didn't agree with that happened in Senate. Because I think that very often there is this effort of, oh, SGA should appear united and we should make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to public statements and things like that. But the reality is we're all students and we all have different opinions and different perspectives and different backgrounds. And so I think it's very important for senators and leadership and everyone to speak out if they think that something inside of or outside of SGA is not appropriate.
We've already started working on this. We actually had a couple first semester senators reach out to us and kind of present to cabinet, and those conversations were extremely valuable because, like we were saying before, we sometimes get caught up in this bubble of, oh, this is how SGA has always worked, this is how it should continue to work. And it's like, no, we need to hear student concerns, but especially from our first year senators that should feel comfortable and excited about SGA and excited to have new members in the future and go for leadership positions. We had someone come up saying she was scared to run for leadership after that process kind of went down. So we want to make sure that that's not a trend that continues in the future.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So on your action plan, one of your goals was to increase the social media presence of SGA. Could you describe a little bit about what you think needs to change about the social media access to SGA?
Yeah, so I think that our current director of communications has been doing a really good job starting us in this direction of using our platform to amplify student voices and amplify things that are happening on campus that have nothing to do with SGA. So we've been doing what's the name? Mindful Mondays, where different student organizations can submit basically quotes about what they wish administration knew, what they wish the student body knew, about what they do. So I think that with that will hopefully come more club collaboration. I think also using SGA's social media as more of a forum as opposed to just announcements would be really helpful. So really creating, again, Hannah's done a pretty good job of this, of creating a link tree of like resources on campus, using the platform that we do have to highlight issues. And if there's legislation being debated, make sure that we are publicizing what that legislation is, inviting student feedback, saying, reach out to this person if you have concerns about this legislation, because ultimately there will always be students who just don't have the time to be senators or to come to meetings. That happens. But we need to create more opportunities for them to give feedback so that we hear from as many constituents as possible when we are making any kind of decision that affects the student body.
And then you had mentioned the Mindful Mondays, but I don't know if you want to talk about the podcast as well that was started.
Oh, yeah. SGA has recently started a podcast called Awun's Goons. Yep.
Sorry.
No, I know.
That's great.
Yeah, so it's currently being run by two of our senators. And I think it's a really good step towards, again, SGA transparency, really highlighting the discussions that are happening in SGA and also just sharing stuff that's going on campus. So all of these are steps that we are already taking and we hope to continue taking towards more transparency and more openness about what's happening in SGA.
I would also add, I don't know if this is the best way to say it, but we're
That's
really
a good start to a conversation.
We're really looking to humanize SGA. We want students to know that we're there with them. We're facing the same problems they are. We want to open...
We're crying about online classes.
Yeah. But we want to open a dialogue with them so that we can really hear from them, hear their concerns. So we're definitely trying to spread more and more on social media. And also we want them to know about the resources we have. Casey touched on it earlier, but the fact that students don't have to be in SGA to come to committees. They can come, and if they have opinions or questions or if they have a project they want to work on, this is what we're here for. And leadership is always so excited to work with other clubs or individual students. So I think in general, we would love to increase our presence in social media and online in general. We also, we're talking about how on the My Northeastern and Student Hub pages right now, I mean, the SGA website isn't even linked as a resource there. And so no wonder a lot of students don't know that we're here. A lot of students don't know about the election happening or don't even know we have an SGA. And these are all problems because when the whole school will come together, that's when we'll get things done, but not if we're so separated.
Yeah, that's very beautifully put.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. So, unlike most other student organizations, leadership members of SGA get a stipend, and this is through fundraising. And why do members receive a stipend?
So this has been a very big discussion in the past couple of years. For people who don't know, the SGA stipend used to come out of the SAF. It was a significant amount of money. It was before either of our time, so I don't remember how much it was, but it was a significant amount of money, and it came straight from the SAF, which is funded by students' fees, and it was for all of the members of cabinet. So that's, I think, like 10 people, that's a lot of money. So a couple years ago, we moved from that to our cash account, as you said, through fundraising. And the way that we're operating it now is it is an opt-in stipend. Essentially, the reason that we have this at all is so that there is more opportunity for students who otherwise wouldn't be able to put in the amount of time that is necessary to be a leadership member of SGA. So the way that we've kind of framed it is it is an honor system because we are a student organization and we can't access financial need records. But the expectation is that it is need-based. So if someone on leadership would have otherwise been taking this time to do a part-time job to help support themselves or their family or anyone, this is a little bit that we can do to maybe ease that burden and allow for more accessibility of leadership in SGA. That being said, it is not a lot of money. The way that it breaks down right now, all members of SGA leadership are expected to put in minimum 20 hours a week to their position. And so I think, oh gosh, we calculated it. I think it breaks down to like 5 cents an hour for the year. That might be an overestimation as well, but it really is just a small fund for those students who need it, trying to make leadership more accessible to those who otherwise wouldn't be able to put in the time for a leadership position.
So on that note, is information about the stipends public record, publicly available for students who may be curious to learn about this?
What particular information do you mean?
So is there information available on where the fundraising money comes from, like who donated money or how much money different different members of leadership may or may not be getting?
So for confidentiality reasons, we don't release who is receiving stipends. I would be happy, I don't have the numbers memorized off the top of my head, but I don't know if you remember, we did set a maximum for stipends. So I think it was, oh gosh, I don't remember, 5,000?
Oh, I thought it was
10,000?
I thought it was less.
1,000?
I thought it was 2,000.
I meant total in terms of for everyone. I don't remember. I don't remember. Sorry. I can get you that information. Sorry, that was the most rambly.
Okay.
But so I'm gonna just start over. For confidentiality reasons, we can't release which members of leadership are currently receiving stipends, especially because we do treat it as need-based, and that wouldn't be appropriate. However, we can publicize where the fundraising money comes from. I don't think we have in huge amounts recently. Mm-hmm. The majority of the money comes from either individual donors who are alumni who want to donate specifically to the SGA. There are other sources of funding for our cash account, which include, so this wouldn't be specifically for the stipends, but when certain offices want to work on projects with SGA, so for example, we had tailgates last year with co-sponsored with athletics, and so athletics put some money into our cash account to go directly towards those programs. So that would be for the stipends, but that's another example of where our cash account funding can come from. Another instance is we, as leadership members, obviously not this year with COVID, but there have been instances where we volunteer for things like Welcome Week, where student leaders would sometimes be paid to do those positions. For us, when we volunteer, instead of us being paid, it goes into the cash account. So that would be a source for stipends, volunteering funds. That would be another example of where cash account funds come from. I can't think of any more off the top of my head, but again, this is something that we don't necessarily publicize, but I don't know why we don't. Yeah. This is definitely something that can and should be public record. So,
yeah, not the individuals because it is opt-in,
but in terms of where the funds come from and things like that,
definitely.
You're right. That should be more public than it is. This is why we love having conversations with other students, because as Izzy said, we do sometimes get caught in the, oh, this is just how it works. And it's like, wait, that's such an easy fix. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Just one last thing on that note. With the issue of it coming from fundraising, has there ever been discussions on what to do if certain people are donating more money so SGA will act in their self-interest?
Honestly, the quick answer is no, that hasn't been a discussion. That's not an issue that we've ever come across. It definitely is an issue that could arise. However, it's really not something that I have seen. I think that any instances that could kind of be like related to that is when if certain offices give us a lot of funding for certain events or things like that, sometimes there is a surplus, like we don't need all of the money they're giving us. Generally, that is then just recorded and put aside for, okay, next time we need to do an event with athletics, we still have this funding left over from the last time that they gave it to us. So I don't personally see an instance where that could happen, because we are quite conscious of where the money comes from, and then where it goes. In your mind, in the spirit of the question, would that be more university offices or like alumni?
I was thinking of the question in terms of, again, this is student government, in terms of the United States government with like lobbyists. Would that become an issue in which we are seeing lobbyist groups for SGA trying to I don't want to say take advantage, but
I think take advantage is a fair phrasing. Again, it's not something we've seen, but it definitely is something to think about, because especially as we do try to make SGA a bigger presence on campus, it does open us up to that kind of risk of, again, it feels melodramatic to say talking about a student organization, but like corruption and things like that. And so it definitely is something to consider, especially as all of these things on our platform are geared towards inviting more people into the fold of SGA.
Well, thank you so much for that question, unless you had anything to add.
I don't think so.
Okay, great. And then, so on the note of money, one of the things SGA is responsible for is helping with club budgets. Could you describe that process a little bit and what your plans currently are for that?
Yeah, so I will make a distinction here. there are two boards under SGA that kind of function as their own entities, and that's the Finance Board and the Student Involvement Board. Sorry, I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Both Finance Board and SIB operate under the purview of SGA almost because there's nowhere else for them to operate. So SGA is one of the clubs that the Finance Board reviews the budget applications for and things like that. So we have no control as general SGA leadership about what goes on in the Finance Board whatsoever. So that being said, I am probably not the best person to ask about the process for club budget allocation. The things that I will say are that recently I had a student come to me, the leader of one of the clubs on campus, come to me with concerns about the functioning of the Finance Board and the communication between student organizations and the Finance Board. Especially the fact that multiple reports are due, and then reports are due to SABO as well, which is the Student Activity Business Office. And it's confusing and it's complicated, and it would be a lot better if everything was more streamlined and more efficient. We're currently, that really stuck with me because I think that's super valid, and I think that that's an issue that a lot of organizations on campus have. I am currently in conversations with CSI, and I'm going to be reaching out to the Dean of Corey soon to talk about creating a platform that is more streamlined, that could allow the Finance Board and SABO to look at the same records and take that same information, making it a lot easier for student organizations. And then hopefully making it easier for organizations that are audited, organizations that need to request budget reallocations, things like that, really having everything in one place. Ideally, this new type of platform would replace Engage. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I think I am, because this has not gone far. This is kind of in its...
It was just brought up.
It was just brought up.
Yeah.
But I think that there are definitely instances like that where there are steps that, even though we have no input about the specific budget allocation, we can take steps to help the Finance Board improve its transparency, improve its student access, and help student organizations be more aware of what that process looks like. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not the best people to ask for that, since we do have a specific person that kind of deals with that. But I will say you touched on a good point, that it was a student that brought up that concern. It's something we hadn't thought of, and that's what we're trying to emphasize with this platform, is we want to hear those concerns from students so that we can make these actions.
So thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us today. That's all the time we had for questions. If there's any final statements you'd like to say about your candidacy, that would be great if you'd like to direct those now.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having us. We're always grateful to be able to talk about this. As I'm sure you've gathered, I am a rambler, so I love to talk about things on our platform. In terms of things that we'd like to say to the student body, really, it's just please vote. Voting is going to be on the Student Hub from the 14th to the 18th. And just as a reminder, the candidates are not the only thing on the ballot. There are 5 incredibly important referenda questions that are going to be there that hopefully we will be able to take and really push for this year, even more than previous referenda have been advocated for. So we are really excited for that. And if you have any concerns whatsoever, we would love to hear them. Please reach out to us. All of our contact information is on powertothepack.com.
So I guess along with that, if you would like to follow our social media, it's at Power to the Pack on Instagram, and I think also on TikTok.
Yep.
But just to get more information about the campaign, if you want to learn a little bit more about me and Casey, definitely check that out. Thank you for having us. And really our main goal here was to spread awareness about the campaign, about the referenda questions, like Casey was saying. And we just hope that students will exercise their right to vote. It's important on campus, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you so
coming.
much.
So I'm Ilana Gersten with NUTV News. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching.